The Strange Ring. Ethan Walker was no hero. He was just a human archaeologist, someone who preferred dusty ruins over crowded cities and old artifacts over lively company. That's why he found himself on a forgotten planet in the outer edges of the galaxy. The locals called it Arvenis, a place filled with ancient ruins and secrets long buried under its red sands. Ethan's guide, a scruffy alien named Drick, grunted as they climbed the crumbling steps of a ruin. "This place is cursed," Drick muttered, his three eyes darting nervously around. "No one comes here for a reason." Ethan didn't believe in curses. He believed in history. His scanner beeped as they reached a small chamber. The walls were covered in glowing symbols, strange and unfamiliar. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it rested a ring. It wasn't big or ornate, just a simple band of metal, yet it glimmered as if it held the light of 1,000 stars. Curiosity got the better of him. "Looks like we found something," Ethan said, stepping closer. His heart raced. The ring seemed to hum softly, though it was impossible to tell if the sound was real or in his head. Carefully, he reached out and touched it. The moment his fingers brushed the metal, the ring sprang to life. It shot up and lashed onto his finger, tightening as if it had always belonged there. Ethan yelped and tried to pull it off, but it wouldn't budge. The glow intensified, flooding the room with light. The symbols on the walls began to pulse, and the air grew thick with energy. "What did you do?" Drick shouted, backing away. "You shouldn't have touched it." "I didn't think it would," Ethan started, but his words were cut off. A sharp pain shot through his hand as the ring's light dimmed, leaving him breathless. When he looked at it again, the ring seemed ordinary, as if nothing had happened, but Ethan knew better. He could feel it now, a faint presence in his mind, like a whisper he couldn't quite hear. Before he could say more, a low rumble shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling, and cracks spidered across the walls. "We need to get out of here," Drick yelled, grabbing Ethan by the arm. They scrambled out of the chamber as the ruin began to collapse. The sun was setting by the time they made it back to their ship, the darkening sky casting long shadows over the dunes. Ethan leaned against the hull, panting as he examined the ring again. "What is this thing?" he muttered. Drick didn't answer. He was staring at the horizon, his normally pale skin turning a sickly green. "We're not alone," he whispered. Ethan followed his gaze. A sleek black spacecraft was descending, its engines humming ominously. The ship landed with a hiss, and a group of tall, armored aliens emerged. They carried weapons that glowed faintly, and their eyes locked onto Ethan with cold precision. "Human," one of them barked in a guttural voice. "You carry the key of Asheran. Surrender it now." Ethan frowned. "The what?" "Look, I don't know what you're talking about." "The ring," the alien growled, stepping closer. "It belongs to us." Ethan instinctively clenched his fist, feeling the metal press against his skin. "It's stuck," he said, taking a step back. "I can't." "Then we'll take your hand," the alien said, raising his weapon. Drick cursed under his breath and shoved Ethan towards the ship. "Run, you idiot." Lasers fired, scorching the ground where Ethan had stood moments before. He didn't need to be told twice. Adrenaline surged through him as he sprinted up the ramp of his ship. Drick close behind. The engines roared to life, and the ship lurched into the air just as the aliens opened fire again. Ethan gripped the controls, his hands shaking. "Who are those guys?" "They're the kind of people you don't mess with," Drick said, his voice trembling. "That ring you found, it's more than just a piece of metal. It's a key to something powerful, something everyone in the galaxy wants." Ethan glanced at the ring again, his mind racing. It felt heavier now, as if it carried a weight he couldn't see. "What do I do?" Drick shook his head. "If they're after you, running won't be enough. You've just painted a target on your back, human." As the stars stretched out before them, Ethan realized his quiet life of digging through ruins was over. He had stumbled into something much bigger than himself, something dangerous. The ring was a mystery, but one thing was clear. It wasn't going to let go of him. And neither were the people chasing it. For better or worse, Ethan Walker was now a part of the galaxy's deadliest game. The galactic hunt begins. The starship's engines hummed softly as Ethan slumped into the pilot's chair, his mind racing. The events at the ruins felt surreal, like a bad dream he couldn't wake from. He flexed his hand, the strange ring still glowing faintly on his finger. No matter how much he pulled or twisted, it wouldn't budge. Drick paced the cramped cockpit, his long tail flicking anxiously. "You don't understand what you've done," the alien muttered. "The key of Asheron isn't just a relic, it's a beacon. The moment it bonded to you, every scavenger, warlord, and power-hungry maniac in the galaxy would have felt it." Ethan frowned. "A beacon? You're saying people can track this thing?" Drick stopped pacing and fixed Ethan with a glare. "Not people. Everyone. The key isn't just a prize. It's a legend. They'll all come for you, the bounty hunters, the syndicates, even the empires. They'll tear apart entire planets just to get it." Ethan leaned back, the weight of Drick's words sinking in. "Well, that's just great. I didn't ask for this. I was just trying to study some ruins, not start an intergalactic manhunt." Drick scoffed. "Ruins don't glow, hum, and bond to your flesh, human. You've stumbled into something ancient, something powerful. Now we have to figure out how to survive." Before Ethan could respond, the ship's console beeped, breaking the tense silence. A warning flashed across the screen. Unidentified ships were closing in fast. "What now?" Ethan groaned, leaning forward to check the scanners. 4 blips appeared on the radar, moving in from different directions. "They're boxing us in." Drick snarled and slammed a clawed hand on the console. "Pirates. They must have picked up the signal from the key. They'll strip the ship and sell us to the highest bidder." Ethan's stomach churned as he tightened his grip on the controls. "Not if I can help it." The first pirate ship came into view, a bulky, rusted vessel bristling with weapons. A garbled transmission crackled through the comms. "Attention, small craft. Surrender the artifact, and we might let you live." Ethan pressed the comm button, his voice shaking but firm. "Yeah, not happening." The response was immediate. Lasers erupted from the pirate ship, lighting up the void. Ethan yanked the controls, the ship lurching as he barely dodged the first volley. Drick shouted, gripping the back of Ethan's chair. "What are you doing? This ship wasn't built for combat." "Well, it better learn fast." Ethan shot back, punching the throttle. The ship surged forward, weaving between asteroids as the pirates gave chase. The cockpit lights flickered as a near-miss rattled the hull. "Left," Drick yelled, and Ethan twisted the controls just in time to avoid a second ship blocking their path. "You're going to get us killed." Ethan gritted his teeth, sweat dripping down his temple. "You're welcome to take over any time." But Drick didn't respond. He was staring at the ring, his expression shifting from fear to something else. "Hope." "Wait," he said suddenly. "The key, it might have defenses." Ethan shot him a doubtful glance. "Defenses? It's a ring, not a weapon." "Not just a ring," Drick insisted. "It's a relic of the Asheron Empire. They didn't make anything without a purpose. Focus on it. See if it reacts." Ethan had no better options. Taking a deep breath, he tried to clear his mind and focus on the ring. The whispers in his head grew louder, forming patterns he couldn't understand. But then, something clicked. The ring flared brightly, its glow spreading through the cockpit like liquid sunlight. Outside, the nearest pirate ship spun wildly out of control, its systems sparking as if short-circuited. One by one, the other ships faltered, their engines stalling as an invisible wave of energy washed over them. Ethan stared in disbelief. Did I do that?" Drick let out a shaky laugh. "Looks like the key isn't as useless as it looks." The victory was short-lived. A massive shadow loomed over them as a larger ship emerged from hyperspace, a sleek, menacing cruiser emblazoned with the insignia of the Shalkar Syndicate. The pirates were scavengers, but the Shalkar were professionals, merciless, relentless, and well-equipped. "They'll have countermeasures," Drick warned, his voice grim. "We can't outrun them." Ethan's hands trembled as he adjusted the controls. "Then what do we do?" Drick hesitated before answering. "We need allies. I know someone, a rebel who hates the Shalkar as much as anyone. She might help." "Where is she?" Ethan asked, a flicker of hope breaking through his fear. "Far," Drick said, punching in coordinates. "But if we survive long enough to get there, she might be the only chance you've got." As the Shalkar cruiser closed in, Ethan took a deep breath and pushed the ship to its limits. The ring pulsed against his finger, as if alive, as the hunt began in earnest. The power of the ring! Ethan stared out the cockpit window at the swirling nebula ahead, its vibrant hues of blue and purple a stark contrast to the cold dread he felt inside. Behind him, Drick tinkered with the ship's failing systems, muttering curses in his alien tongue. They had barely escaped the Shalkar Syndicate, but their ship had taken a beating. The engines sputtered unpredictably, and the shields were nearly non-existent. As the stars stretched into elongated lines, signaling their jump to hyperspace, Ethan slumped in his seat. He looked down at the ring on his finger, its faint glow pulsing in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was alive, aware in some inexplicable way. Drick's voice broke the silence. "I hope you know how lucky you are." Ethan turned, raising an eyebrow. "Lucky? Did you miss the part where half the galaxy wants me dead?" Drick snorted, tossing a burnt-out circuit onto the floor. "Lucky that the key chose you. If it hadn't bonded with you, the Shalkar would have already torn you apart to get it. They'd tear the whole galaxy apart, honestly." Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Yeah, well, I don't feel very chosen. This thing is more trouble than it's worth." Drick paused, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "You don't understand, human. The key of Asherin isn't just a shiny trinket. It's a relic of an ancient civilization, a civilization so advanced that their technology seems like magic to us. The key is said to unlock their greatest weapon, something that could destroy planets, or save them." Ethan frowned, the weight of Drick's words settling heavily on him. "And it bonded to me. Why?" Drick shrugged, resuming his work. "Maybe you've got a pure heart. Maybe the Asherans had a sense of humor. Who knows? What matters is that it's stuck with you, and now you've got to figure out what it wants." Before Ethan could respond, the ring's glow intensified. A sharp, piercing sound filled the cockpit, like a frequency too high for human ears. Ethan winced, clutching his head. The whispers he'd been hearing since the ring first latched onto him grew louder, forming words he could almost understand. Drick froze, his three eyes narrowing. "What's it doing?" "I don't know." Ethan groaned, his voice strained. It's talking to me." The whispers turned into a flood of images, flashing through Ethan's mind like a movie playing too fast. He saw towering spires of crystal, alien cities bathed in golden light, and massive ships hovering silently in the skies. Then came the destruction, fires raging, cities crumbling, and a weapon of unimaginable power tearing through entire fleets. Ethan gasped, snapping out of the vision. His hands trembled as he looked at Drick. "It's showing me their history, the Asherans. They built the key to control that weapon, but it's more than that. It's a warning." Drick's face darkened. "A warning?" Ethan nodded. "The weapon didn't just destroy their enemies. It turned on them. It's too powerful, too dangerous. That's why they hid it." Before Drick could reply, the ship's alarm blared, cutting through the tense moment. Ethan spun back to the console, his heart sinking as he saw what was on the scanner. "They found us," he muttered. A Shalkar frigate had appeared behind them, its weapon systems locking on. The comms crackled, and a deep, guttural voice filled the cockpit. "Surrender the key, human, and we'll make your death quick." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't reply, his mind racing for a way out. The ship was barely holding together. A direct confrontation would be suicide. "Use the key." Drick hissed, panic creeping into his voice. "I don't know how." Ethan snapped. "It's not like this thing comes with instructions." The frigate fired, a warning shot that narrowly missed their ship. The impact rattled the hull, and sparks flew from the console. Ethan gripped the controls, his knuckles white. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Do something." The ring flared brighter, its light filling the cockpit. Ethan felt a surge of energy course through him, as if the ring were drawing power from his very soul. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he wasn't in the cockpit anymore. He was somewhere else, floating in a void of light and sound, surrounded by the echoes of the Asheran civilization. A voice spoke, deep and resonant, in a language Ethan didn't recognize yet somehow understood. The bearer of the key must prove their worth. Will you fight for balance, or fall to greed? "I just want to survive," Ethan shouted, his voice echoing in the void. The light pulsed, and Ethan found himself back in the cockpit. The ship's controls glowed faintly, infused with the same energy as the ring. Without thinking, Ethan moved his hands over the console, his actions guided by instincts that weren't his own. The ship spun sharply, dodging the frigate's next barrage. Energy surged through the weapons system, and a beam of pure light erupted from the ship, slicing through the frigate's shields like paper. The enemy ship exploded in a brilliant flash, leaving nothing but debris. Ethan slumped in his seat, his chest heaving. The glow from the ring faded, and the ship returned to its normal state. Drick stared at him, wide-eyed. "What the hell was that?" Drick whispered. Ethan shook his head, still trying to catch his breath. "I don't know, but I think the key just saved us." Drick leaned back, his expression a mix of awe and fear. "If you can do that, no one's going to stop coming for you. They'll all want the key, and they'll destroy anything in their way." Ethan nodded grimly. "Then I guess we need to find this weapon before they do. If it's as dangerous as the Asherans thought, we can't let it fall into the wrong hands." As the ship limped away from the battlefield, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the key wasn't just guiding him, it was testing him. And the galaxy wasn't going to wait for him to figure out why. The race to the weapon. The battered starship emerged from hyperspace with a shudder, the damaged engine sputtering as they settled into orbit around an uncharted planet. Below them, the surface shimmered with emerald green oceans and sprawling crystalline landmasses. The planet was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, and yet, somehow, it felt familiar. "This is it," Drick said, leaning over the console, his voice tinged with awe. "The coordinates the key revealed lead here. If the Asheran weapon exists, it's somewhere down there." Ethan stared at the planet, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The key on his finger pulsed faintly, as though it could sense its proximity to the source of its creation. He wasn't sure if that thought comforted or terrified him. "Let's not celebrate just yet," Ethan said, pointing at the radar. "We've got company." Drick squinted at the display, his expression souring. 3 ships, each bearing the insignia of different galactic factions, had already arrived and were patrolling the planet's atmosphere. Their sleek designs and powerful weaponry left no doubt. They were here for the key. "Great," Drick muttered. "Looks like the entire galaxy got the memo." Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. "If they're already here, they might have found the weapon. We can't let that happen." Drick snorted. "And what's your plan?" "Fly down there and ask them nicely to leave." "No," Ethan said, his tone sharp. "We go down quietly. The planet's surface has enough interference to mask our landing. But if they spot us, we're done." Frick grumbled but didn't argue. Together, they plotted a descent trajectory that would keep them out of sight. As they entered the atmosphere, the ship groaned under the strain, the damage from their previous battles becoming more apparent. "You sure this thing is going to hold together?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "No," Drick replied, strapping himself into his seat. "But if it doesn't, at least we'll crash somewhere pretty." The ship broke through the clouds, revealing a landscape of glittering crystalline forests and jagged cliffs. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy, and Ethan felt the key grow warmer against his skin. It was leading him, pulling him toward something he couldn't yet see. They landed in a clearing surrounded by towering crystal spires. The ship hissed as it powered down, the engines finally giving out. Ethan and Drick stepped onto the surface, the air buzzing faintly around them. It was eerily quiet, the only sound coming from their footsteps crunching against the crystalline ground. "Now what?" Drick asked, scanning the horizon. Ethan held up his hand, the key glowing brighter. It seemed to resonate with the environment, casting a soft light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "We follow this," he said, taking a step forward. As they moved deeper into the forest, the energy in the air grew stronger. The spires around them hummed faintly, almost as if they were alive. Ethan felt a strange connection to the place, as though the key were sensing with the planet itself. "Do you feel that?" Ethan asked. Drick nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, it's like the whole planet is watching us." Before Ethan could respond, a sudden noise shattered the silence. They froze as a group of armored figures emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the pair. At their center was a towering alien with jet-black armor and a cold, calculating gaze. "Hand over the key," the alien demanded, his voice like gravel, "and you might walk out of here alive." Ethan's heart pounded, but he stood his ground. "Not happening." The alien's gaze flickered to the ring on Ethan's finger. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, human. That weapon isn't just power, it's destruction. Do you think the key chose you because you're worthy? No, it chose you because you're expendable." Ethan swallowed hard but didn't lower his hand. "If it's so dangerous, why do you want it?" "To control it," the alien said, stepping closer. "To ensure it serves the right purpose." "And by right purpose, you mean your purpose," Ethan shot back. The alien smirked. "Exactly." Before Ethan could react, the key flared with a blinding light, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When the light faded, the ground beneath them began to shift. The crystal spires around them retracted into the ground, revealing a hidden staircase leading deep into the planet. "It's opening," Drick whispered, his voice trembling with both fear and excitement. The alien leader growled, signaling his men forward. "The weapon is mine. Kill them." Chaos erupted. Blaster fire lit up the air as Ethan and Drick dove for cover. The key seemed to react instinctively, creating a shimmering shield around Ethan that deflected the incoming shots. Drick, meanwhile, fired back with a small pistol, his aim surprisingly precise. "We can't fight them all," Drick shouted. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The staircase was their only chance. "We don't have to. We just need to get down there." Using the key's shield as cover, they made a break for the opening. The alien leader roared in frustration, ordering his men to pursue them. Ethan and Drick descended the staircase, the crystalline walls glowing faintly as they moved deeper into the planet. As the sound of the battle faded behind them, Ethan couldn't help but feel they were heading into something far more dangerous than the enemies above. The key pulsed against his finger, its whispers returning, louder and clearer than ever. "Prove your worth," it seemed to say. Ethan glanced at Drick, who looked equally terrified and determined. "Whatever's down here," Ethan said, "it's not going to let us take it without a fight." Drick nodded grimly. "Let's just hope it doesn't kill us before the others get a chance." The path ahead glowed brighter, leading them toward the heart of the Asheran legacy, and the terrible truth behind its creation. Betrayals and revelations, the staircase seemed to go on forever, spiraling deeper into the crystalline earth. The air grew warmer, pulsing with an energy that made Ethan's skin tingle. Every few steps, the glow from the walls brightened, casting eerie reflections that danced across the crystalline surface. Drick was panting, his pace slowing. "Are we walking into a furnace or a treasure vault?" he grumbled, wiping his brow. Ethan ignored him, his focus locked on the key. It wasn't just glowing anymore. It was vibrating, almost as if it were alive. The whispers in his mind grew louder with every step, forming fragmented words in a language he didn't fully understand. As they reached the bottom, the staircase opened into a massive chamber. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness, while the walls shimmered with intricate carvings, depicting the rise and fall of the Asheran civilization. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and above it hovered a sphere of pure energy, swirling with violent storms of light and shadow. "The weapon," Drick breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan stepped closer, drawn to the sphere. It wasn't just a weapon. It was something alive, pulsating with raw power. The key on his finger reacted, its glow sensing with the sphere's energy. Drick grabbed his arm. "Wait, you can't just walk up to it." Ethan hesitated, realizing Drick was right. The air around the sphere crackled with dangerous energy. One wrong move could disintegrate them both. But before Ethan could speak, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them. The alien warlord and his soldiers emerged from the staircase, weapons raised. "Well, isn't this a surprise?" The warlord sneered. "You did all the hard work for us." Ethan clenched his fists. "You're not taking it." The warlord laughed. "I don't need to take it. The key is already mine, attached to an expendable courier." He motioned to his men. "Kill the alien. We only need the human." Before Ethan could react, Drick spun around, drawing his weapon. He fired a single shot, hitting one of the soldiers square in the chest. Chaos erupted as the other soldiers returned fire. Ethan ducked behind a crystalline pillar, his heart racing as the sound of blaster fire filled the chamber. Drick shouted over the noise, "You need to activate the weapon. Do something with that ring before we're both dead." Ethan's mind raced. He didn't even know how the key worked, let alone how to control the weapon. But as he glanced at the hovering sphere, the whispers in his head grew louder, forming a single clear phrase: "Approach and be judged." Summoning his courage, Ethan darted out from cover and sprinted toward the pedestal. The air grew heavier with each step, pressing down on him like an invisible weight. The warlord shouted behind him, ordering his men to stop him, but Ethan didn't look back. The key on his finger flared, creating a shimmering barrier that deflected the incoming blaster fire. As Ethan reached the pedestal, the whispers in his mind transformed into a deafening roar. The sphere's energy lashed out, wrapping around him in tendrils of light. His vision blurred as he was pulled into a vision, a memory embedded within the key itself. He saw the Asherans, their empire at its height. They had created the weapon as a means of maintaining peace, a deterrent against war. But power had corrupted them. Factions within their society had turned the weapon against each other, leading to their downfall. The key was their last hope, a safeguard to ensure the weapon would never be used recklessly again. The vision shifted, showing Ethan himself, standing at the center of a swirling storm. The whispers spoke again, clear and direct. "The key chooses only those who seek balance. Will you wield its power, or fall as the Asherans did?" "I don't want this," Ethan shouted into the void. "I didn't ask for it." The voice responded, calm but unyielding. "Choice is irrelevant. Action defines worth." Ethan's vision snapped back to reality. The sphere's energy surged, and the chamber shook violently. The warlord stood at the edge of the room, shielding his eyes from the blinding light. "What are you doing, human?" he bellowed. Ethan turned to face him, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I'm doing what you never could, making the right choice." The key's glow intensified, and Ethan raised his hand toward the sphere. The energy tendrils wrapped around his arm, pulling him closer. He could feel the power of the weapon surging through him, threatening to consume him entirely. But deep down, he also felt a strange sense of control, as if the key were guiding him. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his side. Ethan gasped and stumbled, looking down to see a blade protruding from his torso. Behind him stood Drick, his face twisted with regret. "I'm sorry," Drick whispered, pulling the blade free. "I had to. The Syndicate promised me freedom if I delivered the key." Ethan collapsed to his knees, blood pooling beneath him. The key's glow flickered, and the sphere began to destabilize, its energy spiraling out of control. The warlord stepped forward, laughing triumphantly. "You fool. Trusting anyone in this galaxy is your first mistake." But as the warlord reached for the key, the ring flared one last time, creating a massive shockwave that sent everyone flying. Ethan gritted his teeth, clutching his wound as he struggled to his feet. The whispers in his mind were louder than ever, urging him forward. Summoning every ounce of strength he had left, Ethan placed his hand on the pedestal. The key merged with the sphere, creating a blinding explosion of light. The chamber shook violently as the energy surged outward, consuming everything in its path. Ethan's vision blurred, and the last thing he saw was the warlord's enraged face before everything went dark. The ultimate choice. Ethan awoke to silence. The blinding light that had engulfed the chamber was gone, replaced by a faint, pulsing glow that illuminated the ruins around him. The crystalline walls were cracked but still standing, their once vivid carvings now dim and lifeless. The pedestal where the sphere had hovered was now empty. The energy dissipated. His head throbbed, and his side burned where Drick had stabbed him. He pressed his hand against the wound, wincing. The blood had dried, but the pain was sharp and constant. Groaning, he pushed himself to his feet, his legs unsteady beneath him. The ring was still on his finger, but its glow was faint, flickering like a dying ember. Ethan felt its weight more than ever, as if it carried the burden of everything that had just happened, and everything that was still to come. Across the chamber, he spotted Drick. The alien was slumped against a shattered column, his eyes half open. When he saw Ethan, he flinched, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But it wasn't there. The blast had stripped them both of their weapons and scattered debris everywhere. "I didn't think you'd survive that," Drick muttered, his voice weak. Ethan limped toward him, his anger boiling just below the surface. "You stabbed me," he said through gritted teeth. "You sold me out to the Syndicate. And for what? A promise they were never going to keep." Drick looked away, shame flickering across his face. "You don't understand what it's like to live under their control. They own everything, your life, your freedom. I thought if I gave them the key, I could finally be free." Ethan stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about freedom or power. This is about stopping something that could destroy everything." Drick opened his mouth to respond, but a low rumble cut him off. The ground beneath them began to shake, and the air grew heavy with energy. Ethan turned to see the pedestal glowing again, the light spreading outward in thin, jagged lines across the floor. The sphere's energy hadn't dissipated. It had been absorbed by the chamber itself. Suddenly, the carvings on the walls began to shift, their patterns rearranging into a massive holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy, with key locations marked in vibrant colors. At the center was the weapon's true form, a colossal structure hidden deep within an uncharted region of space. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "It's not here," he realized. "This was just a gate. The real weapon is somewhere else." Before Drick could respond, the hologram shifted again, this time showing a vision of destruction. Fleets of ships disintegrated in waves of light. Planets cracked and shattered. Entire star systems vanished in an instant. The voice from the key returned, echoing through the chamber. The bearer must decide, wield the power or destroy it. Ethan clenched his fists. Destroy it. That's what the Asherans wanted, isn't it? They built this to stop anyone from using it. The voice was calm, unwavering. Destruction requires sacrifice. The bearer's essence fuels the key. To destroy the weapon, you must give yourself entirely. Ethan froze, his mind racing. He looked at the hologram, at the devastation the weapon could cause. If he didn't stop it, billions, maybe trillions, of lives would be at risk. But destroying it meant giving up his own life. Was he ready to make that choice? Drick struggled to his feet, his expression conflicted. Ethan, there has to be another way. Maybe we can control it. Maybe we can keep it out of the wrong hands. Ethan turned to him, his voice sharp. You think anyone can control this? Did you see what it did to the Assurans? It's too dangerous. Drick hesitated, then nodded, his shoulders slumping. You're right. I'm sorry for what I did. Ethan sighed, his anger fading. It's too late for apologies. We need to act. As he stepped toward the pedestal, the chamber trembled violently. The hologram showed a fleet of ships descending on the planet. The factions who had been chasing the key were closing in. We're out of time, Ethan muttered. He placed his hand on the pedestal, the key's glow intensifying. The voice returned, louder than ever. Final confirmation required. Will you destroy the weapon and sacrifice yourself? Ethan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Images of his life flashed before him. His quiet days as an archaeologist, the people he'd met, the adventures he never asked for but couldn't avoid. And then he thought about the galaxy, the countless lives that depended on this decision. I will, he said firmly. Do it. The pedestal erupted with light, and Ethan felt a searing pain shoot through his body. The energy of the key poured into him, tearing through his very being. He screamed, his vision fading as the chamber dissolved into a blinding white void. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was lying on the ground outside the ruins. The sky above was calm, and the ships on the horizon were gone. Drick knelt beside him, shaking him gently. You did it, Drick said, his voice trembling. The key, it's gone. The weapon's energy is dispersing. They can't use it anymore. Ethan blinked, the weight of what had happened crashing down on him. The key was no longer on his finger, but its presence lingered, faint and comforting. He had made the ultimate sacrifice, but somehow he was still here. As Drick helped him to his feet, Ethan looked out at the horizon, a faint smile on his lips. The galaxy was safe, for now. And though the burden of the key was gone, he knew his journey was far from over. The human factor. Ethan sat by a crackling fire under the alien night sky, its two moons casting a pale glow over the shattered ruins behind him. The calm should have felt like relief, but instead it was suffocating. The key was gone, its immense power dissolved into the void, but the memory of what he had done lingered. Across from him, Drick poked at the fire with a shard of crystalline debris. The alien had been uncharacteristically quiet since they'd emerged from the ruins. Ethan couldn't tell if it was guilt, relief, or fear that kept him silent. Maybe it was all three. You don't have to stay, Ethan said, breaking the silence. His voice was hoarse, heavy with exhaustion. You did your part. The Syndicate's not getting the weapon. You're free. Drick snorted, not looking up. Free? You think this changes anything? The Syndicate doesn't forgive failures, and I stabbed the only person crazy enough to save me. He finally met Ethan's eyes, his expression unreadable. Why didn't you leave me behind? After what I did, you should have let me rot. Ethan shrugged, leaning back against a chunk of crystal. Maybe I'm just as crazy as you think. Drick didn't laugh. He just stared into the flames, his shoulders slumped. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Ethan's instincts kicked in, and he scrambled to his feet, wincing as his side protested. Drick was already scanning the horizon, his hand on the hilt of a blade he'd scavenged from one of the fallen soldiers. A sleek ship descended from the sky, its dark hull gleaming in the moonlight. Ethan recognized the markings instantly. Galactic Coalition. Relief flooded him, though it was tempered with caution. The Coalition were supposed to be peacekeepers, but their methods weren't always gentle. The ship landed with a hiss, and its ramp lowered. A squad of armored soldiers emerged, their weapons raised but not aimed. At their head was a tall, imposing figure in a polished uniform. Her sharp eyes scanned the area before settling on Ethan. "Ethan Walker," she called, her voice clear and commanding. "That depends," Ethan replied, trying to keep his tone light despite the tension crackling in the air. "Who's asking?" The woman stepped forward, her soldiers flanking her. "Captain Alina Varine of the Galactic Coalition. We've been monitoring the situation on this planet. Reports indicate you've neutralized a potential galactic threat." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Neutralized is a strong word. Let's just say I didn't let it fall into the wrong hands." Varine's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "We detected the energy signature of the Asheran weapon dissipating. Care to explain how you managed that?" Ethan hesitated. The key was gone, and with it, the power that could tempt even the noblest of beings. He wasn't sure how much he should reveal. "Let's just say it's not a problem anymore." Varine studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. The Coalition owes you a debt, Mr. Walker. But understand this, what you did here will attract attention. The factions who wanted that weapon won't just give up because it's gone." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I figured as much." Drick stepped forward, his usual bravado returning. "So what now?" "You arrest him. Drag him off to some interrogation chamber for saving the galaxy." Varine raised an eyebrow. "No, but we will be keeping an eye on him. And you. The Syndicate doesn't forgive, and neither do half the factions that were after that weapon. If you want to stay alive, you'd better learn to trust someone." Drick opened his mouth to retort, but Ethan cut him off. "Thanks for the advice, Captain. We'll figure it out." Varine nodded, then gestured to her soldiers. "We'll escort you to a safer location. After that, you're on your own." Ethan wanted to argue. He hated being anyone's responsibility, but the exhaustion in his bones told him he didn't have much of a choice. "Fine," he said, "but don't expect me to stick around." Hours later, after the Coalition ship had dropped them off on a remote neutral planet, Ethan and Drick found themselves sitting in a bustling spaceport. The smell of fuel and spices filled the air as travelers of every species hurried past, their voices blending into a constant hum. Ethan stared at a monitor displaying outgoing flights. He could disappear here, vanish into the crowd, and live out his days in quiet obscurity. But deep down, he knew that wasn't an option. The key might be gone, but its legacy wasn't. The factions that had hunted it wouldn't stop, and someone had to ensure they didn't destroy what was left of the galaxy. Drick leaned back in his chair, his tail flicking lazily. "So, what's the plan, hero?" Ethan smirked. "Plan? I thought you were the one with all the brilliant ideas." Drick chuckled, a genuine laugh for the first time in days. "All right, fine. Stick with me, and I'll teach you how to survive out here. You're going to need it." Ethan nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Deal, but don't expect me to forgive you just yet." "Fair enough," Drick said, standing and stretching. "Let's find a ship. The galaxy's not going to save itself." As they walked toward the hangars, Ethan felt the faintest echo of the key's whispers, a reminder of the burden he had carried and the choices he had made. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: he wasn't done fighting for it.